biological diversity. This will be key to reaching the SDGs, informed by the best available science, research, as well as indigenous and traditional knowledge. In this regard, Mr. President, we call for urgent action to halt and reverse the destruction of nature. This will accelerate the achievements of the Sustainable Development Goals and the biodiversity targets that expire this year. We must all work together, Mr. President, with scaled-up ambition, through partnerships, collaborations, and cooperation. Mr. President, we must build back better and smarter as long as it is no longer business as usual, but rather business unusual, to urgently deal with the vulnerabilities of our societies, our economies, for a post-COVID-19 recovery. A recovery that must put us back on track and promote harmony between people and nature. I thank you all for your attention.
I thank the President of the Republic of Kenya for the statement just made. I now invite the President of the Republic of Slovenia to deliver a pre-recorded statement.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the high rate of biodiversity decline represents a serious threat to life on our planet and undermines human development. COVID-19 pandemic manifests a clear link between human health and health of ecosystems. The need to protect and restore our national habitat is even more urgent. The color of our post-pandemic world must be green and oriented towards sustainable production and consumption without overstepping planetary boundaries. Biodiversity conservation is beneficial. It safeguards global food security and contributes to climate change mitigation and adaptation. Slovenia is a land of forests and ample water resources. My country occupies less than 0.5% of the Earth's surface. At the same time, it provides home to 1% of today's known species. This makes Slovenia a special guardian of biodiversity on a global level, committed to nature conservation. Our determination to preserve gifts of nature has led us to take concrete steps, such as introducing green and environmental taxes, use of renewable energy sources, and declaration of access to clean drinking water as constitutional right. World Bee Day, proclaimed by the United Nations, is Slovenia's initiative. I would like to thank you for your support. On 20th May, we raised awareness of the importance of pollinators for biodiversity and sustainable development. In the 21st century, security and prosperity will depend on how we manage global goods. The world is standing in front of an important opportunity to redefine people's relationship with nature. I would like to reaffirm Slovenia's and my personal commitment to stop an unprecedented rate of biodiversity loss and halt climate change effects. Let us all become international leaders on biodiversity to protect humanity's most important life-supporting safety net. Thank you so much.
I thank the President of the Republic of Slovenia for the statement just made. I now invite the President of the Republic of South Africa to deliver a pre-recorded statement.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic has badly affected the ability of national economies to respond to challenges like environmental degradation and climate change. But even as we prioritize economic revival and reconstruction, we must maintain our collective commitment to environmental conservation. This is even more important when considering that there are strong linkages between environmental destruction and the emergence of new deadly diseases in humans. Devastating processes such as biodiversity loss, deforestation, the loss of farmland, animal habitat loss, and the consumption of wild species are creating conditions for infectious diseases that we will soon be unable to control. South Africa commits to working with the UN Environmental Programme in the development of tools to track the future emergence of zoonotic diseases. South Africa is the third most mega biodiverse country in the world, endowed with unique species and ecosystems found nowhere else on Earth. As a signatory to the Convention on Biological Diversity, we are working to conserve our biodiversity, promote its sustainable use, and ensure the benefits of the commercial use of genetic resources are fairly distributed. We have a biodiversity economy strategy that integrates the sustainable management of biodiversity with job and business creation opportunities. We have increased our territorial protected areas and our protected ocean space. As nations of the world, we must appreciate the complex interdependence between nature, economic activity, and human development. In pursuit of sustainable development, our recovery strategies can and should strike a balance between environmental and economic imperatives. We need a holistic approach to achieving Sustainable Development Goal 15 on halting biodiversity loss. As responsible global citizens, we need to change our behavior as well as our consumption patterns, and we should work to integrate approaches to improve conservation of species and ecosystems. We need to adopt sustainable land management practices and to restore degraded lands and implement sustainable food production models and develop more climate-friendly agriculture. There needs to be a shift away from economic models that value growth for growth's sake towards a circular economy. We must engage with local communities and draw on traditional knowledge, as well as to promote the inclusion of women and indigenous populations in bioprospecting, as well as other sectors. As we emerge from COVID-19 pandemic, not only must we raise the ambition of our biodiversity targets, we must also ensure that the recovery effort fosters greater and not less harmony with nature. Through improved awareness, through improved collaboration and collective determination, we can ensure that we build back both greener and better. I thank you.
I thank the President of the Republic of South Africa for the statement just made. I now invite the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to deliver a pre-recorded.
President of the General Assembly, Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to participate in this segment of the high-level summit convened ahead of the 15th session of the Conference of States Parties to the Convention on biological diversity. I am aware that the objective of the summit is to mobilize greater support and enhance action at the highest levels of government, industry, academia, and civil society against biodiversity loss. This summit presents a unique opportunity for each of us as global leaders to demonstrate measurable commitment to accelerate action towards the development of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Indeed, negligence in renewing our commitment to hold the ongoing destruction of nature and nature-based solutions will seriously threaten our collective existence in the post-coronavirus era. I am concerned that the attainment of national developmental priorities as well as internationally agreed developmental aspirations would be hampered if the critical value of biodiversity and ecosystem services are not recognized and appreciated by our citizens. Nigeria, like other countries, has a wide array of rich and valuable national heritage that include impressive network of wetlands, wildlife, and forestry resources. Regrettably, most of the indigenous flora and fauna commonly found within the country are becoming endangered and facing extinction. To reverse this situation, we have developed the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan as an enabler for integrating biodiversity considerations into sectoral and cross-sectoral policies, plans and programs at all levels of the government. We are reviewing our biodiversity-related laws and developing shelter belts across 11 states in the country. In addressing biodiversity loss, we are implementing the hydrocarbon pollution remediation program in Ogoni land. The ongoing cleanup is another landmark in the ecosystem restoration initiative of our administration. It is aimed at improving livelihood of communities in the South-South region of the country. Significantly, our administration has also approved a new national forest policy in July this year to ensure continuous socio-economic development that will provide optimal benefits to the people and government of Nigeria in a sustainably managed environment. Beyond this, we are considering the development of a national mangrove restoration project to deliver qualitative livelihood benefits to the Niger Delta region. Furthermore, we are currently implementing a national program on reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, a mechanism developed by parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This program is aimed at discouraging deforestation, conserving already existing forests, enhancing carbon stock, and mitigating climate change impact. We have also facilitated the designation of Finima Nature Park in Bonny Island, River State, as the 12th Ramsar site of international importance. The government is equally incorporating biodiversity into tourism sector through a national program targeted at combating illegal wildlife trade and trafficking in 2 pilot protected area sites, Lemre Gashaka Gumti National Park and the Yankari Games Reserve. In fulfillment of our international obligations, Nigeria is expediting the process of accession to both the Nagoya Protocol on access to genetic resources and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from their utilization, as well as the Nagoya Kuala Lumpur Supplementary Protocol on liability and redress to the Cartagena Protocol on biosafety. Concerning ocean governance and marine biodiversity protection, Nigeria is among the first 12 countries to sign on to the 30 by 30 Global Ocean Alliance. Accordingly, we have identified 2 viable sites for the establishment of marine protected areas to help in the protection, conservation, and management of both marine and coastal biodiversity resources. Leveraging on the strategic action plan of the Lake Chad Basin, Nigeria is spearheading sub-regional biodiversity action to mitigate insecurity, provide jobs, boost agricultural output, food security, and reduce poverty. Towards the delivery of our biodiversity aspiration, Nigeria has concentrated on the provision of the Convention on Biological Diversity, the protocols adopted under the Convention, and other relevant multilateral environmental agreements into national environmental policies and programs. Let me reiterate the call for a dedicated international engagement in support of sub-regional efforts to raise the $50 billion United States dollars required to actualize the recharging of the Lake Chad. Let me seize this opportunity to express Nigeria's support for the development and implementation of a post-2020 global biodiversity framework, building on the Aichi biodiversity targets and lessons learned from the implementation of the Strategic Plan for Biodiversity 2011-2020. To this end, Nigeria calls for alignment of all national, sub-regional, and regional biodiversity ambitions with all internationally agreed development agenda 2030 for sustainable development. In order to ensure that no country is left behind in meeting the 2050 vision for biodiversity, Nigeria enjoins advanced economies to support developing nations with capacity building, technology transfer, and technical assistance. I firmly believe that traditional knowledge, innovation, and the application of nature-based solutions are plausible steps to drive the biodiversity agenda. To sum up, the government of Nigeria will continue to explore the intrinsic values of biological diversity. We will more effectively implement all biodiversity-related multilateral environmental agreements, including the Convention of Biological Diversity, the United Nations Strategic Plan for Forests, and the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration for a Better World. Thank you.
I thank the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for the statement just made. I now invite the President of the Republic of Kiribati to deliver a pre-recorded statement.
Mr. President, UN Secretary General, Excellencies, in His holy name, greetings from the people and the government of the Republic of Kiribati, Kamnapan and Imbabwe. Biodiversity underpins life as we know it. Conservation and protection of biodiversity is therefore not merely a question of morality, but a question of our own survival. Unless we take urgent actions now, we are setting ourselves on the path of self-destruction. Mr. President, Kiribati is committed to meeting its biodiversity targets. This is demonstrated in the establishment of the Phoenix Islands Protected Area, known as PIPA, which is the second largest marine protected area in the world and the largest World Heritage Site. PIPA represents 11% of our EEZ, which exceeds the SDG 14.5 and IG 11 targets. With the absence of commercial human activity in this MPA, amongst other important functions, it serves as a breeding ground for tuna that is regenerating the world's tuna stock. In recognition of its global contributions, the UNGA passed a resolution in 2018 titled Oceans and the Law of the Sea, which recognized PIPA in OP 267 as an exemplary model of international cooperation, coordination and collaboration in marine protection and conservation. PIPA is also host to rare and new species, including the recently discovered novel bacteria with potentially special properties important to mankind. Furthermore, Kiribati is in the process of acceding the Nagoya Protocol on access and benefit sharing to protect and manage the access and use of unique genetic resources found in our oceans. Using the PIPA model, Kiribati also created the Southern Line Islands Protected Area and a network of smaller community-based marine managed areas, further exceeding our SDG and IG targets. In recognition of our commitments on global biodiversity, Kiribati was appointed the 2019 Commonwealth Blue Charter Champion for Sustainable Coastal Fisheries. PIPA will play an important role in the fulfillment of the government's vision for the next 20 years, in light of its critical conservation function that will underpin the sustainability of the fisheries sector and its great ecosystem potential. Mr. President, it is alarming to know that progress on global biodiversity has not been enough. The world needs more actions and less talking. Global issues of biodiversity and climate change are closely linked, and we cannot address one without the other. Kiribati is committed to raising ambition for the post-2020 global biodiversity and climate change targets, and I call upon leaders to follow suit. I thank you.
I thank the President of the Republic of Kiribati for the statement just made. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Zimbabwe to introduce the pre-recorded statement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to introduce a pre-recorded statement by the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, His Excellency Dr. Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa, on the occasion of the Biodiversity Summit.
Your Excellency, Mr. Volkan Bozkır, President of the 75th session of the General Assembly, Your Majesties, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Your Excellency, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, it is an honor to address this United Nations Summit on biodiversity, convened at an opportune time when the world is grappling with interconnected, complex challenges affecting our planet. We commend the Secretary of the Convention on Biological Diversity, Ms. Elizabeth Maruma Murema, for convening this important summit. Zimbabwe, like the rest of the world, faces unprecedented emergencies caused by challenges of climate change, biodiversity loss, and the threat of COVID-19 on the gains made with regards to biodiversity conservation and the ability to meet sustainable development goals. These negative trends must be halted and reversed to avoid a global environmental tragedy. The outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, whose origin is linked to Mother Nature, has reminded us that humanity and the environment are inseparable. Instructively, sustainable global partnerships to nurture the relationship between humanity and the environment have therefore become more urgent. Excellencies, the forthcoming 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity, COP15, presents an opportunity to develop a framework for realizing a nature-positive and a carbon-neutral world by 2030. This is a necessary step towards the vision of living in harmony with nature by 2050. My country will match this ambition by appropriately reviewing and implementing its national biodiversity strategy and action plan using a multi-sectoral approach. The Archie targets set out in the strategic plan for biodiversity 2011 to 2020 are not on track. We must seek to redouble our efforts towards accomplishing the agreed targets and goals guided by science. In addition, a funding mechanism to support capacity building and technology transfer to developing countries is therefore of utmost importance. Without these interventions, the failures of Arch biodiversity targets will continue to haunt us. The principle of common but differential responsibilities in relation to resource mobilization and financial support remain crucial for the successful implementation of the plan. Excellencies, the interlinkages between biodiversity, food security, disaster risk reduction, health and climate change cannot be overemphasized. This brings to the fore the need to align the goals of the post-2020 biodiversity framework with the SDGs to ensure the full realization of sustainable development, living in harmony with nature. In concluding, Zimbabwe remains fully committed to the three core objectives of the Biodiversity Convention, which are conservation, benefit sharing, and sustainable use. We will thus deploy the appropriate interventions and resources towards the realization of its successful implementation. I thank you.
I thank the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe for the statement just made. We have just heard the last speaker on the list for this morning. However, the Assembly will continue to hear the pre-recorded statements in the spillover event immediately following this segment. Therefore, I kindly encourage the delegates to remain seated. We shall then continue the summit at 3 p.m. in this hall for the Leaders' Dialogues 1 and 2. Before adjourning, suspending the meeting, I would like to call the attention of members to the letter circulated on 20th of September 2020, which has information regarding the occupational safety and health plan for this meeting, including the possibility of a follow-up in the unfortunate and hopefully unlikely event of a case of COVID-19. The meeting is adjourned.
The COVID-19 crisis is an unprecedented challenge, but UN peacekeeping is still performing its vital peace and security tasks, protecting some of the world's most vulnerable and helping to nurture a fragile peace in some of the world's most dangerous places. During this pandemic, UN peacekeeping is performing vital peace